SOMA is a 2015 amnesia-like horror game that opens on two juxtaposed ethical thought experiments, two life support problems, which are presented as the setup for the transhuman narrative of digitizing the human mind into computer bodies. You will need to have a base understanding of the game's main antagonist, the WoW, for this analysis. It is an artificial intelligence goo robot designed to repair the Pathos 2 C-Lab, and over time started seeing the humans as part of the station. So it tries to keep the people alive while integrating them into the C-Lab. It is a horrific life support system for robots, and now also people. Though you may not have a full picture of the scenario when you first play, paying close attention and some background knowledge in the philosophy of mind can fill in the gaps. We play as Simon, a brain trauma victim who undergoes an experimental treatment by having a complete copy of his brain, our brain, saved onto the computer. Much later, that copy is loaded into a robotic diving suit in the Pathos 2 C-Lab. The first person we meet, Carl, is also a brain scan trapped in a robot, just like the protagonist. But they are immobile and being powered by the WoW. Second is Amy, in her original body, whom the WoW has hooked up to a Geiger-esque artificial internal organ. They both maintain a sense of self. They both perceive themselves as human from their own internal experience, just like your player character does. They both clearly can experience pain, physical or mental. The only difference is that you, an outside observer, can see that one of them is a brain scanned into a robot body, and the other is a human body. So the question becomes, does bodily autonomy, the right to decide for yourself how your fundamental rights are expressed through your flesh, originate from the body? Or does it originate from the subjective sense of self? If you decide the latter, the subjective sense of self, is it right to take their lives? Or should you leave them supported? Both Carl and Amy ask you to go find help. They have clearly expressed that their wish is to not be unplugged. You can surmise from the apocalyptic situation that there is no help that you can offer. So, is it better to take their lives now, or is it better to let them continue to suffer for an unknown amount of time, perhaps forever, despite going against their wishes? The unique aspect of this story is how it adds the ontological question of what is the self to the ethical question. The question of self is perhaps the first philosophical question humanity ever formed. It is central to Vedic literature, some of the oldest surviving writing that we have today. The Vedas elevated the self to notions of permanence and cosmic truth. When I first watched Markiplier play this game in 2015, I had debated about these kinds of ethical thought experiments for years. I thought I knew the right choice to make, but I never thought I would have to experience it. Now, having replayed the game myself in 2021, the year my family made this choice, because of the coronavirus, I can say honestly that it is not an ethical question. You do everything you can, and you don't do what you can't. There's nothing moral about it. It's just unfair. There is only one other engagement with the ethical quandary of persistent life: Pathos 2 Station Theta, the location where Catherine, the brain scan human who has accompanied us on this horror tour of C-Lab 2021, attempted to scan the brains of her coworkers to put them onto a space arc computer simulation. When rebooting the server room for Theta, we will walk past two more human bodies being kept alive on life support by the WoW. We cannot interact with them in any way. The only foil was Mark Sarong, who developed some idea of continuity to make sure that the copy on the Ark is the only true self. That so long as there is only one version of you that thinks itself you, then that is the true self. Yeah, he convinced people to commit suicide. What rational justification was given for this? That the original human body will die anyway, so might as well get it over with? It is an unconvincing and hand-waving idea that relies on a preoccupation of the universal ontological supremacy of the ego, while also being willfully ignorant of the fact that the time taken after the scan to commit suicide means that the scan and death were not simultaneous, could never be simultaneous, and thus couldn't ever count as an ontological continuity, even if the ego could magically manipulate matter in this way. But is convincing people to commit suicide worse than the choice to unplug Carl and Amy to save them from pain? The only explanation for why people went along with this idea is that they were depressed, which does make sense, but not as a philosophical justification. This is juxtaposed against Catherine's callous attitude toward all kinds of life. At the Theta Station, when we express concern about the ethics of manipulating a brain scan just to get a security code, she tells us that some ideas just shouldn't be thought about. A character who, as a scientist, has a life philosophy of willful ignorance. Meanwhile, the human body Catherine from the past is highly implied to have hidden the multiple dead bodies of her coworkers in a closet so that the head of security would not shut down her attempt to scan everyone at Pathos 2 to get them onto the Ark. Hell, when it is revealed that the deceased human body inside the diving suit that we are walking around with is the body of her girlfriend, she thinks that it is cool that you are a cyborg. Cool. Completely misunderstands why using a corpse as a part of a machine is problematic. Plus, it doesn't help that the protagonist of this game is both brain damaged and a run-of-the-mill idiot. No matter how many times it is explained, he cannot comprehend that in this world, consciousness can be replicated, but the experience of self is persistent. From the moment the scan is made to the moment it finishes uploading, one's personal experiences of time do not control the material world around you. The self is not the center of the world. He even expresses understanding of the situation during the continuity section in the Theta Station, which makes the ending freakout all the more frustrating. Throughout the Pathos 2 Theta Station, there is not any variance to the choices you can make, unlike with the original life support problems at the start. The brain scan that we trick into giving us a security password, once they have served their purpose, can either be left offline or deleted. No new information is given by these choices, and neither choice will change the scenario. In philosophy, symbolic logic is a system by which we can somewhat mathematically determine how an argument is constructed in a language. It is not so much about whether the ideas we are communicating are true or false, but more about the form of our language in order to determine whether we have constructed our writing such that it can be accurate. In symbolic logic, the Greek symbol theta is used to mean to do. A theta is a generic action, any given action. And despite my frustrations, I understand the position that Catherine and Simon are in. The entire Pathos 2 station is itself on life support. The Ark is also a kind of life support, just a more pleasant looking and feeling one. This station is the last living humans on the planet. But while this game, this entire scenario, feels like an ethical question, it isn't. It's just unfair. Catherine and Simon are past making ethical choices. They are just making choices. They are simply acting in a purely unfair situation. They are doing a theta, under the hope that once the Ark is in space, that there is a chance at a better future out there. the lack of understanding on the part of the protagonists necessitates the use of multiple haphazard metaphors, like games of chance. And unfortunately, the preoccupation with the question of self means the game makes no further room for an honest exploration of the ethical challenges that the game opens on. Throughout the game, SOMA wants to ask whether each form of the self counts as the true self, as an actual person or human. It even has you, a flesh human holding a controller, pretending to be a brain scan in a robot body, fill out a survey to assert whether or not you are a true self. Yet, at every turn, the game clearly wants you to say, yes, this counts. The fictional setting has decided that point for you, before you arrive. And many games that want to tackle this question have the exact same issue. Mass Effect have people say that AI and the Geth don't count as real people all the time, but treat Geth and AI characters as real people fully and immediately. Nier Automata shows the machine lifeforms having thoughts and emotions right away, while the only ones denying that fact are the androids, which are also robots having thoughts and emotions. Had SOMA, a smaller game with a more manageable scope, seriously tackled this ethical question of the unfairness of choice in deciding life or death for a helpless person, for a loved one, for someone else's loved one, rather than being caught up on the redundant question of self, using life support as a mode for the binary choice of yes or no, it would have made room for a third choice. A choice to take action by forging a new way forward. I feel that this is a sorely missed opportunity. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. And if you are interested in small indie projects exploring concepts of self, you will probably enjoy this video on Nier Cogito, a fan game that very explicitly asks the question of whether or not AI and machines can be considered people. I'll see you next time, and stay true.